June 19, 1944. The Philippine Sea, 0909 hours. Commander James Blanchard watches through USS Albacore's periscope as the largest carrier he has ever seen turns into the wind. She is 855 feet long, 37,270 tons at full load. She carries 75 aircraft and 2,150 men. She is Taiho, the Imperial Japanese Navy's newest fleet carrier, commissioned 4 months earlier in March 1944, and the first Japanese carrier built with an armored flight deck. She is Vice Admiral Jisaburo Ozawa's flagship, the centerpiece of a mobile fleet that has been conserving strength for 2 years, waiting for this single decisive engagement in the Philippine Sea. Blanchard fires 6 torpedoes, 5 miss. The one that connects strikes near Taiho's forward elevator. The damage report reaching Ozawa's bridge is assessed as minor. Flight operations resume within the hour. The ship holds speed. 6.5 hours later, Taiho is gone. 1,650 of her 2,150 men are dead. The American submarine that fired the torpedo never knew she sank. So why did she? The armor on Taiho's flight deck was not overconfidence. It was a direct institutional answer to the worst single day in Japanese naval history. At midway in June 1942, Japan lost 4 fleet carriers, Akagi, Kaga, Soryu, and Hiryu, in less than 24 hours. American dive bombers penetrated unarmored flight decks and detonated among the aircraft fuel lines and ordnance staged on the hangar decks below. The structural failures cascaded faster than any damage control party could contain. The Naval Technical Department's analysis of those losses concluded that the carriers had been fatally vulnerable to a single penetrating hit in the wrong location. Taiho was the answer. Her flight deck was protected by 3.1 inches of steel plate. Her internal bulkheads were redesigned to contain progressive flooding. Her torpedo defense system, layered void spaces and liquid-filled compartments along the hull, was built to absorb the aerial torpedo warheads, then in service. The British armored carriers, illustrious and formidable, had each absorbed bomb hits in 1941 that would have destroyed unarmored counterparts, and both had survived. The concept had real operational evidence behind it. When Albacore's torpedo struck on June 19th, the initial damage assessment was reasonable given what was known. The forward elevator was damaged. There was flooding in forward compartments, but the ship's speed and steering were unaffected. Damage control parties reported the situation as contained. Ozawa's staff, managing a fleet air battle involving hundreds of aircraft across hundreds of miles of ocean, had no grounds to believe their flagship was in mortal danger. The gap in the design was not structural, it was procedural. The specific failure mode now developing inside Taiho, pressurized aviation fuel vapor migrating through a longitudinal ventilation system aboard a ship still underway, had never been formally modeled, drilled, or addressed in any damage control manual carried aboard. It was not negligence. The scenario simply had no documented precedent in Japanese carrier operations. The armor worked exactly as designed. That was not where the ship would be lost. The man whose action shaped Taiho's final hours was not an engineer and not a senior officer. He was Warrant Officer Sakio Komatsu, a 23-year-old torpedo bomber pilot airborne from Taiho's deck when Albacore fired her spread at 0909. From altitude, Komatsu watched 5 torpedoes miss and tracked the 6th running true toward his carrier's hull. He put his Nakajima B-6N torpedo bomber into a dive and placed it in the torpedo's path. The deflection was sufficient. The torpedo's angle of impact shifted, limiting how deeply it penetrated the hull. Komatsu was killed instantly. His action is verified in Japanese naval records and survivor testimony. It worked. The torpedo struck at a compromised angle, rupturing forward fuel lines and damaging the elevator trunk. But the penetration was less severe than a direct hit would have produced. The damage control officer who made the critical decision that followed is unnamed in the verified historical record. He went down with Taiho at 1628. What survived was the testimony of approximately 500 evacuated crewmen, gathered by Japanese naval investigators in the weeks after the battle. From that testimony, investigators reconstructed the sequence with reasonable consistency. Komatsu's sacrifice almost certainly bought Taiho several hours of continued operation. It also, by limiting the visible severity of the initial damage, appears to have contributed to the assessment that the situation was under control. A more severe initial wound might have triggered a more aggressive damage control response. There is no way to verify that counterfactual. What is documented is that the time Komatsu purchased was not used in a way that saved the ship. At approximately 1100 hours, 90 minutes after the torpedo impact, a damage control officer ordered the ship's ventilation system activated. The decision was procedurally logical. Damage control parties in the forward lower compartments were reporting difficulty breathing and a strong fuel smell. Standard Imperial Japanese Navy damage control doctrine prescribed ventilation as the correct response to localized gas accumulation. Move fresh air through the affected space, dilute the vapor, restore working conditions for the crew. The procedure was sound for the ships it had been written for. Taiho was different. The torpedo impact had cracked pressurized aviation fuel transfer lines in the forward section of the hull. Taiho's fuel system routing, a consequence of fitting an armored flight deck, expanded fuel bunkerage, and a full air group into a hull already carrying far more structural weight than her predecessors, placed those lines in positions closer to the hull than on earlier carriers. When they cracked, aviation gasoline began converting to vapor in the warm compartment air. The vapor was accumulating in enclosed spaces across the forward section of the ship. When the ventilation system came on, it moved that vapor aft through longitudinal trunks running the length of the ship. By 1200 hours, crew members on the hangar deck were reporting a fuel smell. By 1300, the odor had reached the engine spaces. Survivor testimony indicates that junior personnel raised concerns about the spreading vapor during this period. So no documented evidence shows those concerns reaching Ozawa's bridge staff. The fleet battle was at its height. The operational demands on Taiho's bridge, which was simultaneously Ozawa's fleet command bridge, left no recorded attention for reports of an unusual smell in the lower decks. There was no villain in this sequence. There was a procedure written for a different ship, applied in good faith to a situation it was not designed to address. There was no test. There was only the outcome. By 1400 hours, Taiho has been underway for nearly 5 hours since the torpedo hit. She is still making speed. Aircraft recovery is ongoing. To any surface observer, she is a functioning warship. Her armor is intact. Her engines are running. Inside, across 4 deck levels spanning most of the ship's length, the air is saturated with aviation gasoline vapor. At 1432 hours, the vapor ignites. The exact ignition source was never definitively established. Japanese post-war technical investigators identified a ventilation fan motor and a fuel pump as the 2 most probable candidates. Neither survived to be examined. The first explosion ruptures the armored flight deck upward. 3 inches of steel plate, Taiho's defining protective feature, bends outward because the blast originated below it. The second explosion seconds later destroys the hangar deck as a structural element. The ship begins listing immediately. She sinks at 1628 hours. From first explosion to final submersion, 114 minutes. Of 2,150 crew, 1,650 are lost. Vice Admiral Ozawa and approximately 500 men are evacuated to the cruiser Haguro. Ozawa continues commanding the battle that, by the end of June 19th, has cost Japan approximately 395 aircraft against American losses of 29. The disparity is not a battle. It is a systematic destruction of what remained of Japanese carrier aviation. The full reconstruction of Taiho's final hours, drawn from IJN investigative records and survivor testimony, is linked in the description below. The finding that emerges from the post-war Japanese technical investigation is precise. The torpedo damage itself was assessed as survivable. In isolation, the flooding was containable. Taiho was not structurally doomed at 0910 when the torpedo hit. The investigation concluded she became doomed at approximately 1100 when the ventilation system was activated. 0909 hours. June 19, 1944, Blanchard fires. 6 Mark 18 torpedoes, each carrying a 575-pound Torpex warhead, run toward Taiho's hull. 5 miss. Komatsu dives. The 6th connects at a deflected angle. Blanchard hears 1 detonation, no secondaries. He takes Albacore deep, clears the destroyer screen, and files his patrol report 4 days later at Majuro Atoll, rating the attack as a probable single hit on a carrier-class vessel, with the ship remaining operational. He does not know Taiho has sunk. He will not learn the full outcome for weeks. Above the water, Taiho recovers and resumes operations. Ozawa launches his strikes. The air battle that follows is the largest carrier engagement of the Pacific War. Japan commits over 430 aircraft. American F-6F Hellcats, directed by radar-controlled interception, dismantle them across the morning sky above the Philippine Sea. The ratio of loss is catastrophic for Japan before a single explosion occurs aboard the flagship. At 1432, while that catastrophe is still being counted, Taiho explodes. The 1,650 men who die do not die in combat. They die in the 6.5 hours of apparent normalcy that followed a torpedo hit that everyone on the bridge had assessed as survivable. They are at their stations. They are doing their jobs. Some of them have almost certainly smelled the vapor in the hours before 1432. The junior personnel who raised concerns, per survivor testimony, were not wrong about what they were smelling. They were simply not heard in time, on a bridge managing a losing fleet battle across 400 miles of ocean. The operational record of Task Force 58 for June 19, 1944, by including air combat reports documenting Japanese and American aircraft losses, is linked below. Ozawa evacuates to Haguro at approximately 1530, before the final sinking. He continues issuing fleet orders. He does not yet know the full scale of his air losses. He knows his flagship is gone. He does not know that on this single day, Japanese carrier aviation as a strategic instrument has effectively ceased to exist. Vice Admiral Ozawa survived the Philippine Sea, commanded the carrier decoy force at Leyte Gulf in October 1944, and survived the war. He died in 1966. Commander Blanchard received the Navy Cross for the June 1944 patrol. USS Albacore was lost to a Japanese mine in November 1944 north of Japan. Of her 86-man crew, 9 survived. The Imperial Japanese Navy's post-war technical review identified ventilation-induced vapor propagation as the primary cause of Taiho's loss and recommended procedural and structural modifications for surviving fleet carriers. The war's remaining trajectory made full implementation impossible. Taiho was the only ship of her class ever completed. 2 sister ships were laid down. Neither was finished. The final fact is this: every protective feature that made Taiho the most survivable carrier Japan had ever built, the armored deck, the reinforced bulkheads, the torpedo defense system, performed as designed on June 19, 1944. The structural engineers were not wrong. The armor held. The bulkheads largely contained the flooding. By every metric the ship's designers had used, Taiho survived the torpedo. She was then destroyed by a procedure written to protect her crew, activated in good faith by a trained officer, following the doctrine he had been given, on a ship whose specific internal configuration that doctrine had never accounted for. One torpedo, one ventilation switch, 1,650 dead. The Americans didn't sink her. Taiho sank herself.